Hi, this is Bill Hartman. I'm here for Patriots of Southeast Michigan. And at tonight's meeting, we're going to have Sathi, who is the Michigan State Party Vice Chair of Coalitions. And he'll be speaking to us this evening.
Thank you, Bill, for having me today. I'm happy to be here, make the trip and help out Wayne County Republicans. There's only so many of us. We got to stick together sometimes out here, But glad to be here. And a little bit about myself. My name is Sathi, and I was raised in Southeast Michigan my entire life since I was a year old. Went to Novi Elementary, Middle School, High School. Started out college at Wayne State, finished up at the University of Michigan, and also did a master's there. Now I'm living in Canton, where I own a tutoring company, own a small business, and do whatever I can for the grassroots to help the party and to help make sure that we try and turn this state red again, especially for the presidential years that are election that's coming up here. So that's something that hasn't happened since '88. So definitely got a task ahead of us, but I think there are a lot of great things that the party's been doing that I've been able to be a part of, and so I want to share some of those things. But first and foremost, I want to ask you all, how many of y'all are precinct delegates? So probably most, I would think. Bill might be as well, so you are? Okay, that's great. And so then you probably understand the process. At least the two of you, you've been to the county conventions and where you get a chance to vote. So for those that might not know, when you become a precinct delegate, you run at your precinct level, and then there's about 10,000, maybe a little less than that, Republican precinct delegates in the state of Michigan. And so they get to go to their county convention, and they vote on their county leadership, and then they also vote on who is going to represent them at the state convention from their county. And numbers are allocated based on the turnout of the previous presidential election cycle. So when Mitt Romney ran. And then so from there, delegates go to the state convention, where then they then get to vote, in this case, in this instance, for the statewide party leadership, where I had the opportunity to run this past February for the position that I have. And so there are 6 different vice chair positions, and so I'm the vice chair for coalitions. But there's also a grassroots vice chair, an ethnic vice chair, an outreach vice chair, a youth vice chair. Am I missing one? I feel like I'm missing one.
I think there's one more. I can't remember.
There is. Administrative.
Oh,
administrative.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep. And so those are the 6. And then, of course, there's the chair and co-chair. And the 8 of us combined put together and make up the statewide leadership team. So we get to do a lot in terms of representing the party and being able to get out and talk to groups like yourselves, So, and so in terms of coalitions, I think there's a little bit of an overlap with some of these vice chair positions, but essentially I'm a vice chair to the party, but I'm in charge of overseeing the operation, building coalitions. And so in the process of doing that, if you check out the state party website, there's actually a section about coalitions. And so when I was originally looking to run for this position, there was 11 recognized coalitions by the party. Since then, we expanded to 12, so that's something that I wanted to work on. And working on a 13th one now, bringing in, originally the 12th was the Indian American community, and then the 13th is the deaf community, which I want to work with myself. So that's something that I want to focus on so far in my first few months here in this position. But other coalition groups that are recognized by the party include the Hispanic American community, the NRA, or the gun rights rather, and then the social conservative groups, and then of course a lot of other ethnic groups, African American community, the Italian American community, Polish American community, so things like that. So in that role, essentially, what happens is you get the opportunity to go out a lot to various different community events, and sometimes that's orchestrated by the party. So you get the typical invites. A lot of groups, the bigger ones especially, they try to invite people, both from the Republican Democratic Party, statewide. So you get those invitations automatically. But then the key is to be able to get in and make some inroads with communities and groups that we have never really touched. And a lot of times they're a little bit smaller. So you get whether they're 100 people, whether they're 30 people. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whenever you can get there, wherever you can go. That's kind of the approach that we take. And so, number one, the way that I go about breaking into these communities. For example, I mentioned that as a person of Indian American descent, I had the opportunity to create the first Indian American coalition with the party, and so that was something that I took upon myself, and so I naturally had some contacts in that community, and so first step was make that contact, call that person, send them an email, president of the org, whatever the case may be, let them know that we're here as a party, trying to represent them and talk to them, and let them know that a lot of people don't recognize, especially folks that aren't as engaged with politics, they don't realize that what our state legislature is like, or our state senate. Maybe they know Congress, and even that they may only know their one member of Congress, and then of course maybe they know the governor, and that's about it. So they don't realize sometimes that our state legislature is 63-47 Republican. Our state senate, of course, is 27-11 Republican, and Secretary of State, Attorney General, all the way through is Republican controlled. And so the importance of state government and kind of the ability to actually make lasting change, that's something that I think that we really have to sell to a lot of these new groups, that especially the ethnic communities, the immigrant populations, whether that's the Hispanic community or the Indian American community. It's just they're not engaged voters, right? Or they're not regular voters. They're definitely at least barely voting, if at all, in a general election, let alone in a primary, right? And so I think that's something that the parties struggle with in the past, even nationally, getting into some of these minority ethnic populations and resonating that message with them. When in reality, if you ever get a chance to have conversations with a lot of folks from various backgrounds, especially immigrant population, a lot of them have conservative values, and this is what they talk about from day one when they're born, the way that they raise their children. They're family oriented, fiscally conservative. Many of them are also socially conservative. So it's kind of understanding what message really resonates with them and then tapping into that. So recently, for example, I did a lot in terms of building this new coalition with the Indian American community. So I'll talk about that briefly. But what I've had a chance to do is really go to some of these nonprofit organizations that exist, and some of them they do national conventions, or for example, there's the Indian League of America Michigan that recently hosted India Day this past Saturday, celebrating the 68th anniversary of India's independence. And so these are things that are happening consistently, and these events are drawing 10,000, anywhere from that all the way to this past weekend it was 25 to 30,000 people. And these are opportunities where the Democrats are taking advantage of being there. They're present, they'll have a booth, their candidates are there set up and having conversations. And a lot of times for folks, folks like yourselves, you're engaged voters, either you're precinct delegates or you care about politics, you're coming to meetings, and you care about your country's economic state, whatever the case may be. And it's not that those people don't care, it's just that they haven't had the opportunity to really engage with politics the same way. And so the moment they get to meet somebody, whoever that person is, and they say, I'm a candidate for so-and-so, or I'm an elected official who happens to be a Democrat, they think, oh, well, the Democrats like us, they're here for us, so we're going to support them. They don't think about issues that way, And so what we've been trying to do is really focus on having a presence. Being able to get elected officials there. Senator Colbeck was great. He came to both those last two events that I mentioned. He was there. I gave him a call, and he came out for me. Representative Powerlack from Troy, he came. Previous event, definitely a couple other elected officials, and people are now seeing that. They're saying, hey, these elected officials were able to come. They're supporting us, and in fact, there's recently a caucus that was started. It was called the Asian Pacific American Caucus in the legislature, and some of these representatives and senators are part of that, including Senator Colbeck. And so, talking about the fact that they're now, engaging these communities and caring about them. I mean, that's more than 50% of the way there, in my opinion. I mean, making that presence, and then, what I typically do after that is make sure I do a follow-up. I send an email, make a phone call, say, thank you for having me, whatever the case may be. And this is kind of a method that's been working for us. And so I mentioned the Indian community, but we've also been able to, go to other community events, including doing some work with the office, the Detroit office for the Republican Party that's downtown, working with the African American community. We went to some of the folks, some of the vice chairs went to the NAACP national or state convention that happened a couple months back. We had a presence there. We went to the Arab American News 30th anniversary celebration out in Dearborn, which another community there that I think sometimes we got to be careful with messaging, but it's very conservative values, and so those are some places where I think that we can really make inroads. And right now I'm putting together a program plan that I think will be crucial in terms of making sure we continue to maintain contact with these organizations and continue to go to these events. And what I want to do is, if you look into these various communities, and I'm not even just talking about the ethnic and religious minorities, but also if you look at the gun rights advocates, there are tons of websites out there, local gun groups, or even statewide groups beyond just the NRA. That, and some of you might be gamesmen yourselves or gameswomen yourselves. So maybe you already know that, but being able to do very basic things, have some sort of commercial, or not even that, but a basic advertisement saying, hey, check out the Michigan Republican Party, we're supportive of this cause, here's a link to our website, and that imaging and that messaging, that's the key. And so a lot of these groups, even the ethnic religious minority groups, they have their own newsletters that they do within the community. You go to the temples, you go to the mosques, you go to the synagogues, whatever religious entity, and they usually have something where maybe you write a letter to the editor, or you essentially can do some sort of advertising there as well. So that's kind of something that I'm working with Ross Abraham, who's the digital director for the Michigan Republican Party, to try and figure out how we can target our message to the different communities. So I think that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now with the coalition's work. Even beyond that, I think another area that is beyond the kind of the place that I talked about is there's a lot of small business type organizations, they're nonprofit organizations, and anywhere that if we can get in there and kind of show ourselves to be upstanding people that care about these values, we care about small business, we want to decrease taxes or keep them from increasing at the very least, and make sure that we have a prospering economy. I mean, that's kind of the message. I think we're the party of opportunity. We're the party of opportunity. So I think that message is important to get across. Now, how many of you are familiar with Dashboard? It's something that's been created by the Michigan Republican Party in the last cycle. So a little bit. Okay, so that was the most recent tool that they use essentially to tap into not just each individual person's personal networks per se, maybe their friends and family, but using social media as a real tool to break into getting contact to people. So what they do, what Dashboard essentially does, is it asks you for, of course, your contact information, and then through social media and other sources, you can put in the contact information of your fellow Republican friends, or your fellow moderate friends, or people that are independent voters that could be open to a phone call from the party. And I think in the last cycle, because of this tool that we used, there's been more outreach to more people than any other time in Michigan Republican Party history, which I think was great, and it kind of set the precedent to really break into using social media as a tool. And so with the Democrats, they have a tool, many tools, I guess, but one of the things that I noticed too is that from the grassroots perspective, we're all grassroots people. We understand that, but from an overarching perspective, the Democrats have done a pretty good job with their ground game. And so this is where we can improve our ground game. We get out there, especially with door knocking and that type of strategy. There's a lot of different programs in play where you can, kind of monitor the way that people typically tend to vote based on their previous voting history. And it's not always 100% accurate, but I don't know how many people have knocked doors for a candidate before. So probably everybody. So you already know this. So targeted messaging in that way, and if you can know ahead of time that you're going to knock on this door and this person is going to be anti-gay marriage or anti-abortion or whatever they really care about, kind of targeting the message of the party to that individual. And so I think that because of this dashboard tool and a lot of the work that we're doing with the coalition stuff, we're really breaking into some of these communities and making some inroads and and really growing our grassroots presence. And I think that's very important. So, that's the one thing I think Rhonda Romney McDaniel, the chair for the Michigan Republican Party, she has been doing a lot more, I think, than past chairs in terms of engaging the grassroots and trying to build that operation. So, that's kind of generally a little bit about me and the party and the process of getting involved and kind of what I've done. And
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for coming in today, Ed, and it was a really great time having you come in and speak with our group.
Appreciate it.
Our next meeting is going to be on September 17th, and we're going to be watching the movie Agenda, and then after the movie, we're going to discuss that movie. So it sounds pretty good. Quite a few people have asked us to bring that in. I've never watched a movie and then discussed it afterwards, but it's a new idea. Why not?
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it sounds. We'll have popcorn too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you very much. And this is Bill Hartman for the Patriots of Southeast Michigan.